Professor Bauman, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. In your book, Liquid Fear, you talk about how we live today in a state of constant anxiety about the dangers that could strike unannounced at any moment. Why are we so frightened?
Fear means fear flowing, unanchored, not staying in one place, but diffuse. And the trouble with liquid fear, unlike the concrete specific danger which you know, are familiar with, is that you don't know where from it will strike. We are walking, that's my favorite metaphor, as if on a minefield. We are aware that the field is full of explosives, but we can't tell where there will be an explosion and when. There are no solid structure around us on which we can rely, in which we can invest our hopes and expectations. Even most powerful governments very often cannot deliver on their promise. They don't have enough power to do so. Your job, even in the most reputable and apparently very rich company, may suddenly disappear tomorrow morning. You go to bed, you may wake up redundant. The partnerships between people are also fragile. They are until further notice. They are not till death do us part. And when two people are in a similar situation, and they know that they are here together because they bring satisfaction to each other. Now, if they know about that, then they live in constant fear. What about if the other partner first decides that it is time to give notice and disappear? So on every level of human life, you have the same situation. Uncertainty, impossible to predict the future. And even after you have made your decision, after long deliberation, a very careful, very meticulous calculation, looking retrospectively, you still are not sure whether you made the right or wrong decision.
But is that very different from how it was in the past? Is that only confined to today? Was it not like that in the past? We had uncertainty in the past.
Of course, dangers were with us, with our ancestors, as long as humanity is on Earth. But it was a different story. Well, in the Middle Ages, there were wolves in the forest, so you had to prevent your children going there and keep them at home. Don't go to the forest alone. Danger. Now, instead of dangers, we have what great German sociologist Ulrich Beck called society of risks. Risks mean that at best you can calculate the probability of catastrophe. But probability, it's a very foggy idea. Probability, there may be 90% probability, but still you are in this 10% there, or other way around. Only 10% probability, but you are in this stuck 10%. I put it in one word, actually, in the state of continuous uncertainty, which makes us afraid.
In that case, does that help explain why some politicians like Donald Trump, for example, in the United States, does that explain why they are so popular? Because they claim to have the answers, the definitive answers to this uncertainty?
Well, to put it briefly, there are two crucial values without which a sensible human life is simply inconceivable. One is security, a measure of security, feeling safe. The other is freedom, ability to self-assert, to do what you really would like to do, and so on. They are both necessary. Security without freedom is slavery. Freedom without security is complete chaos when you are lost, abandoned, you don't know what to do. So you need measure of one and the other. we are incredibly more free than our grandfathers or great-grandfathers were. But we paid the price. We had to exchange it for security. A good deal of security has been surrendered. Now we observe what I call the turn of the pendulum. People found themselves uneasy, lost, incapable to act with certainty, with assurance. What's happening today, I think, is a turning of the pendulum. Among other things, it means Donald Trump. Donald Trump is in the limelight because he's, who knows, perhaps the future president of the great United States. But you see the same trend in virtually every other country, not only in the United States of America. Strong men. More and more people dream about returning somebody who will have the courage, the ambition, the boldness to say, give me the power and I will take responsibility for your future. And that's exactly what Donald Trump says. And there are many people like them. There is a lot of political capital in making this sort of promises that, look, democracy did not pass the test. Democracy is weak. Democracy cannot deliver. Democracy is very strong in its mouth, but not in its deeds. But trust me, and I will change the situation. America will be again great, or Marine Le Pen in France. France will be again great, great power. And we won't allow to dismantle that power and diminish it. That's one thing, one answer to your question. The need for a strong man, strong power, something which our grandfathers fought against. They were afraid of totalitarianism. Young people like you forgot what totalitarianism was. You know about it from reading textbooks, but you haven't experienced that. I did. I experienced two of them. The other, however, thing is that in economic progress, in growing GNP and things like that, are always people who are winners and people who are losers. The dismantling of the network of security was particularly strongly felt by people lower down in the social hierarchy. People living in poverty or close to poverty, or the so-called precariat. People in the middle class, at the moment, self-assured, at the moment, well off, but damn afraid that it may not last, that they may at any moment lose their social position. Hence, such phenomena, perhaps some magic, very strong man, man which is not constrained by political correctness, which says what everybody thinks, but doesn't dare to express it in public. Perhaps he will do a miracle. Of course, it is a wasted time to dream, have such dreams, but under the present situation, it is understandable.
One of the things you stated in one of your interviews is that you think other human tragedies have far exceeded the tragedies that the Jewish people have endured. What other human tragedies are you referring to there?
We have no shortage of tragedies, really. Look what's happening, partly because our great guilt. What's happening in the territory which we, by our foolish policy, destabilized and stripped of the normal institutions which were necessary for conducting relatively regular human life, regular routine. Look what's happened in Arabic world, in Yemen, in Syria, in Libya, what's happening now. There was always a pressure for many, many decades already on Europe because of the very drastic differences of the level of living in Europe and in Africa, for example. Pressure of so-called economic migrants. But now we have a new phenomenon again. And that is why Europe, to which doors they knock, is so nervously reacting. I think there is a psychological explanation of that. These people who are coming now are refugees not from people hungry without bread and water. People who yesterday were proud of their homes, were proud of their position in society, were very often very well educated, very well off, and so on. But they are refugees now. They lost their homes, they lost their position in society, they lost everything they hard worked in order to achieve during their life, and they come here. And whom they meet here? What I mentioned before, the precariat. We have nightmares. What if I have a very nice social position, I would like to stick to it, I would like to continue, but what if tomorrow I will learn that my company doesn't exist anymore and my services are not needed? So we are already afraid. Precariat lives by anxiety, by fear. That is the most important defining mark of the precariat. Precariat comes from the French word précarité, and précarité in loose translation means walking on moving sands, not having firm ground under your feet. And we ascribe this fear, logically, to the fact that there, somewhere in the cyberspace, well beyond control of our government, not to mention our own control, there are forces which we call by the name of global powers, which can do whatever they wish. They may strike at any moment. If my job is threatened, that's because of the process of globalization. And there is some truth in it. It's not foolishness to say something like that. And now come those people from Syria and Libya, for example, and they bring bad news. They bring these threats from faraway countries here at our backyard. They suddenly appear next to us. We can't turn back, we can't turn our face. We must. They are too obtrusive, too many of them. We can't omit their presence. And they signalize, they embody all our fears. Yesterday they were very powerful men in their country, very happy men. Like we are here today. But look what's happened today. They are homeless, they are begging, they have without the means of existence. I think that the shock is only beginning. We are far from coming to digest the new situation, adjust ourselves to this new situation. Hospitality possibilities are not limitless, and the human ability to endure their suffering and rejection is not limitless either. So you have to exercise what is called empathy. But, and that's a big but unfortunately, going through that, there's no shortcut solution, instant solution. Dialogue is a long process. Coming to understanding takes sometimes the whole generation or even more than one generation. So we have to brace ourselves to a very difficult time coming. This last year wave of immigration was not the last one. There are more and more people waiting for do just that. So you have to accept this is the situation. Let us come together and find a solution.
Can multiculturalism ever work? You were quoted once as saying that in big cities, none of the ethnic religious groups intend to culturally assimilate, and each group is demanding recognition for its own cultural identity. Multiculturalism is very difficult.
Personally, I don't accept the term multiculturalism. It's much safer, much more to the point, to speak that we are all cast in multicultural environment. Environment is multicultural. Policy of multiculturalism doesn't make much sense. One aspect, one consequence of it is that we are all armed now, as you know, with Facebook and Twitter and generally access to computer. So we divide our life into online part and offline part. Offline, walking the street, going to your workshop, going to your workplace. You can't avoid meeting strangers. They will be there waiting for you. You have to develop some skill in dealing with their presence. Fortunately, we have online part of life. And all investigation, social research shows that most users of computer use it not in order to learn different new alternative ways of life, to understand them, to learn something from them and so on, but to cut them off, to create for themselves what can be said, called comfort zone. There are no strangers there. If there is somebody pronouncing ideas which I personally don't like, I simply strike him or her out from my network. And I am only among people who applaud every word of mine. It's very pleasurable, but very dangerous because we forget the skills which are absolutely necessary in offline world. In this multicultural situation, we are all tied together. But the trouble is that we didn't even start yet developing cosmopolitan consciousness, which means not only thinking in terms of our direct vicinity, environment, but also understand these global connections which determine the conditions under which we live.
So is this something that simply takes time, that we have to get used to the idea that we're interdependent on people and that we can live side by side and be dependent on our neighbours, even if they are very different to us? Why isn't it working yet?
Why it's not working out? That's a very good question. But divisions between people and conflict between people is as old as humanity. There was always intermixing of the processes of integration and separation. For the first time, we are in a situation when we have to commit the next step on the road to integration without separation. Separation was always the instrument, the guiding strategy of the integrating effort. If you wanted to integrate people, you had to point to them joint enemy, joint other, stranger, which is against us, and we need to watch and be vigilant and defend ourselves. But the next step is already a step towards people who are in cosmopolitan situation. but that means the whole humanity. No enemy remaining against whom we will integrate. It's a new situation, untested, unpracticed so far. And that's what makes our present moment so, on one side, terrifying, on the other, so exciting, so fascinating. There's a Chinese proverb, perhaps you heard it, not proverb, but curse, Chinese curse. I wish you live in interesting times. Now this curse is quite real at the moment. But as I said, I am pessimistic in the short term. We are at the beginning of a long, long road. But in the long term, on the whole, except the future of Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I am optimistic.
Given the uncertain time and the anxious time that young people are now living in, are you glad that you lived in the era that you have lived in rather than in the era that is to come, the future?
I remember what great German poet Wolfgang Goethe, romantic poet, he was asked a question quite close. Did he have happy life? What he thinks about his life. And his answer was, yes, I had a very, very happy life. But, he added immediately, I don't remember a single happy week. And that's against the contemporary philosophy, the warning for us, because we have been brought up by marketing, by advertising, by ever new temptations, seductions, and so on, ever new fashions, to think about happiness as an uninterrupted row of better and better pleasures. And what Goethe suggests, and he was a very, very wise man, not only a great poet, is that happiness is in overcoming unhappiness, troubles. In one of his poems, he said that the worst nightmare is a long, long row of sunny days. The alternative of that, the product of that is not happiness but boredom, lack of excitement, lack of purpose to pursue, to fight for, and so on. What Goethe said was a warning for the younger people, really. Don't think about your life as a collection of gifts picked up from the unlimited container of pleasurable items. Think about your life as a long, long struggle. Long, long struggle, you resolve one trouble, comes another, and the side effects are very often unpleasant. So that is, I repeat for the third time already, what makes me short-term pessimist and long-term optimist.
Professor Baumann, thank you for talking
you.
to Al Jazeera. Thank you so much. It was absolutely
you.
fascinating.